start. So first thing first, some housekeeping rules, not rules, but comments. English is not my first language. So if you don't understand something that I say, please just open your mic and ask for me to repeat, and I will rephrase it and try to make it more understandable. So don't worry about that. And I will also share the full presentation with Honey at the end, so she can share with the participants. During the presentation, you also note that all the things that I'm bringing have a source, and the source is indicated in each slide. Part of it will be a conversation, a part of it will be a little more technical, but the idea is to bring some tips and pieces of advice and best practices for fundraising. So to start, I am Vander. I am a Brazilian career professional, master in political science and international relations, and I've been working in fundraising for over 6 years now. And I've worked in different foundations in Brazil and also fundraising with different organizations around the world. I see people from Nepal. I've been there, and I've been working with the third sector for quite some time in my professional life. Before we start the session, I would like us to go to a Mentimeter just to do some quick check-in. Here is the QR code and the code for us to start. This is the part that I have to change the screen. Let's do the from here. Okay. Let me see if I can. So let's check how we're feeling today. Okay. We have different feelings for the day. For some of us, it's early morning. For some of us, it's late night. So I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. Let's check where people are from to see how many different points of view we're gonna have today. Okay, and now for the last question. And that's a question related to this session. When you think about fundraising, what is a word that defines your biggest barrier, your biggest difficulty in fundraising? It's because never done that. So let's check our first perceptions on the barriers for fundraising. Time management. That's a thing. I see asking for money. We're going to talk about the process of doing the ask today. So I think we're going in the right direction. I'm happy with the questions because I think we're going to the right direction during the session. Um, okay, so now I have to go back here. Do you see a screen that say last session?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So in our last session in the Iconic series, we talk about how to find the donors based on the process of defining our organization. So the process of understanding who am I, and when I say who am I, the I means the organization. This process of defining what you want to do as an organization is really important. So having a mission, a vision, theory of change is really important for you to set your expectations in donors, and also to try to understand the donors' expectations on you. So everything we're gonna talk about today, it's starting from the point that we already have a theory of change, we already have a mission and a vision, and our desire here is to learn how to communicate to our donors about what we do and then get the funding. So we're going to see today that fundraising is like a form of art in terms of it can involve the way you speak and the way you write and the way you tell a story. So we're going to go through basically 3 points today. First is going to be being fundable and findable, and then sounding like a pro. That means how we're going to organize the thoughts, and then writing like a pro. That is a session with best practices in writing proposals. Being fundable. You need to be unique to be fundable. And when I say to be unique, I mean you need to be your own unicorn in a certain way. It doesn't necessarily that means that your organization gonna do something really different, because sometimes that's not what the local context needs. Sometimes what the local context needs is a basic organization that, I don't know, do a food bank, for example. The concept of a food bank is not something different, but the necessity that that location has is what makes it unique. So sometimes you need to identify what makes you unique in terms of what you do differently. Oh, we do it different because we look for this special set of vendors. We use the beneficiary's family. So all those items and parts of your work that makes you unique. Every organization has it. You just need to sit with everyone and discuss and get the ideas, like a brainstorm. What makes us unique? Everyone has a special characteristic that makes you special. So it's doing the same thing about your organization. That's gonna make you fundable, because when the donor wants to fund something, it's gonna want to fund something that is unique, because the idea of funding is to make difference through the money. So I need to understand what makes you unique, so I can have the vision that my money is making the difference and how it's making the difference. And then you go to findable. You have to understand your vision, you have to understand your mission, your theory of change, and your uniqueness. And then you need to be able to receive the reach. So being findable doesn't necessarily mean having a website or a large investment in advertising. It means more your ability to tell your story and how you can quickly and easily understand that story across different contexts. So being findable is more about being able to tell the same story from different sides and with different words. So different people can understand what you're doing. We're going to see when we're talking about proposal writing that it's also related to vocabulary. So understanding how the donor speaks about topics, it's going to help us to understand how we can talk about topics. So sometimes we have let's say, in an organization that works with health, the main topics, health, let's say leprosy. It works with leprosy. That's the main topic, right? But in Brazil, half of the population with leprosy, it's women. So I can also approach the same topic, leprosy, through the gender bias. So understanding how can I talk about the same topic, about different beneficiaries in the same topic, will help me to be more findable. Because if I stick to the big topic, leprosy, I might not see some donors that are interested in women. They do not fund necessarily health because that's not the main topic. The main topic is women. But if I approach them about women with leprosy, they might be interested. So this is how to be, what being findable means. Means being able to talk about what you do from different perspectives. We have this professor, Kevin L. Brown, and based it on a theory for theory of change. So theory of change is how you're going to change the world. And there is a concept that creates a one-sentence theory of change. So this professor adapted this framework, this formula, to one-sentence fundraising strategy. The idea here is to make a quick way to go to start to talk about what you do so you can be findable. So basically, you have this small formula that's going to be a sentence where you describe what you do and what you do different from the other organizations and what's your biggest goal. This logic helps you to become more findable because if you're able to do that one sentence strategy, you're going to have on your mind a strategy to go every time you go for a meeting. This is even a quicker way to do an elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is that pitch that you have to be able to do in the time of an elevator trip. Different from other sessions, we'll talk about different topics and whatever. For this session, I want to have a hands-on process as well. So I'm going to show you an example of the strategy field, and then I'm going to give you 15 minutes to try to structure your own organization strategy sentence. So here on the screen, we have the structure. Unlike other organizations, we are free uniqueness and we reach main audience via 2 channels in order to one goal. So here we have an example. Unlike medical aid NGOs, we are focused on forcibly displaced children. We intervene at the golden hour, we train for scale, and we reach high net worth donors via email marketing and speaking in order to build a base multi-year unrestricted funding. So I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to try to construct the sentence here. It doesn't need to be the final version. It doesn't need to be perfect. The idea here is for you to use the time of the session to give it a try and leave the session with some materials for your organization. So I'm gonna close my mic and count 15 minutes from now so you can go ahead and write. Any questions? You just open the mic and we are here.
All right, Vander, I started to see people put the description in the comment section. It is very interesting. You still have time, by the way. Like about 5 minutes.
We still have 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. We still have 5 minutes, but maybe I can start to read one by one that we already have here. The first one, unlike humanitarian organizations, we provide human resources to support idealistic organizations and we reach foundations, supporting grassroots initiatives and community building via direct contact and grant applications in order to build financial capacity for own initiatives. That's cool. The next one, unlike other IVS organizations in the Philippines, we at GIED are committed to integrating international fundraising service into Philippine higher education curricula, advocating for non-formal education pedagogies, and implementing global citizenship education programs to reach out to global education and youth empowerment foundations via advocacy and partnerships in order to offer IVS programs as alternative, high-impact means of quality education and access funding to implement this on a large scale. Wow. That's amazing. Oh, another one. Unlike other scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, we focus on the personal development of students outside of traditional classes. We call for the voluntary support of mentors. With expertise, we build a network which the alumni come back to accompany the current scholars, and we reach long-term donors via frequently social media posts and partner meetings in order to develop sustainable funding resources. This is very interesting. Traditional classes.
I'm really glad to see that someone mentioned the grant application. I really like to see when it fits the organization strategy, because grants itself, it's a really interesting part of fundraising. And if you want to have grants applications on your process, you need to have that in mind, because that involves time management, resource management, team management, because you're going to have people to validate what you're writing, and then you have deadline. So grants application is really important to have that in mind as well.
Yep.
So
still 2 minutes left, but maybe I can, yeah, I can read like a little bit more. Another one, unlike other IVS organizations, ICYE provides high quality and impactful intercultural learning experiences strengthens young people's global citizenship, and promotes global solidarity through long-term international volunteering and community action in order to contribute to social justice, peace, and environmental regeneration. That's also cool. And here from Paulo, unlike other NGOs, we provide high quality education, empower local communities, and offer volunteers a structured way to contribute. We reach long-term donors and partners through digital storytelling and community impact reports in order to provide educational programs. This is a bit different. Oh yeah, there's this comment from Anya. Yeah, don't really like this first part of the sentence. I feel like that many of us do something very similar, and that is okay. Yes, I agree with you, Anya. As one organization alone cannot really achieve it. Also, it is more about collective action than one organization. Yes, this is very beautiful sentence. I absolutely agree with you, Anya. And another one by Aisiwa Inebo. By mobilizing international volunteers in our community, we support our community women, children to develop their confidence high and learn other culture, share own culture. And this makes our community to know more on global culture and share own culture too. This gives our community to realize need of development and progress. Very beautiful. Yep. This is actually interesting. Oh, the last one. Unlike other volunteer organizations, we are involved in ecology and women's empowerment training, and we reach the population through radio. Oh, radio and public events in order to achieve our goals. Wow. Interesting.
Thank you, everyone who sent their sentences in the chat. I'm really glad that that worked. I was expecting to see people engage, but not that much, so I'm really happy. I want to highlight Wilbert's example because the biggest idea here is to also talk about the organization and your fundraising strategy, so you can have both in the same place. So we have what the organization provides, how they reach the audience, but also what they want to regarding fundraising. So we have the part that says in order to build financial capacity, but also list how they're gonna contact directly the donors, but also the grant applications. So for me, this is a good example that we have here among the many others we have. So let's keep going. We have a bit more to cover today. So here we have now a fundraising strategy. So now we're gonna go through some points on how to talk about what we do and how we communicate that to our donors. So in our past session, we had a session, a part of the session on how to identify the donors, right? So I'm gonna give you an example now about how to create fundraising materials. And when I'm talking about create fundraising materials, it can be a pager, a one pager, a two pager, a three pager. It's good that not be more than two, but it's up to you. And also what we call in the negotiation field as a leave behind. Leave behind is a document that, as the name say, you leave behind after your meeting. So I'm gonna give you some tips on how to construct the pager and also the leave behind, and how you can have a structure in blocks, and then you can just move the blocks around depending on who you're talking to. So we need to make our case before we are asking for the money. So before doing the ask, we need to construct the case. Construct the case is basically have all information we need to make our case fundable. So we need to list the topics that it's important to have as the information to go for the conversation get started, or the conversation to be revived afterwards. Okay, so again, everything that I'm bringing, you're also gonna find the sources that I'm using on the slides. So here we're using a book named Making the Ask. So it's why we're using here in this part about how to make the ask. Okay, so when we're talking about building the story arc, this is a framework called Risk, Crisis, Opportunity, Vision. I really like this framework because it gives you different start points for you to construct your story arc. And when we're talking about a story arc, we are talking about how we're going to talk about what we do as an organization. So when you need to have a simple way to present your case can be your organization or a specific project. You can use this framework. Usually it helps with people from different perspectives, because some of the donors will like to understand why it's important and why it's so urgent. So then we have the lower section, risk and crisis. We're going to talk about each of the portions. But and then on the top part, we have opportunity and vision. That is the more optimistic part of the arc. That is when you talk about what you do to help the crisis and what you envision in the future. So it's a framework that plays with time and impact that is really, really, I think it's really cool. I really like to use this a lot when I'm constructing pagers, because you have to 1.5 pages or 2 pages have a summary of your organization, of a summary of a project. So here, if you do with this framework, you can highlight the most important informations for different perspectives, from the crisis to the future. So I really like this framework. I'm a big fan, so kind of suspect here. So okay, so now we're gonna go through the 4 spots. I'm not gonna take long because again, we're gonna have the material. And we also have the writing a good proposal part to cover. So HISC is basically sharing about what's happening, the negative outcome that can happen if we don't take action. The crisis involves making it clear the urgent or the important situation that exists. So here we also have some topics on who would be more appealed to this point. And when we say appealed, we're saying, okay, for this person that it's thinking about the consequences, maybe starting with risks or crisis might be interested then starting with the opportunity. Opportunity is about telling the prospect, the donor, that is a short-term positive opportunity. So because of this happening, we can do this. So let's say about education crisis we're having in Brazil of illiteracy due to the pandemic. So there is an opportunity to use new tools and new approaches to try to boost literacy in Portuguese and math in the Brazilian public system. This is an opportunity. And the vision is laying out a long-term positive outcome that we want to create. So due to this crisis in literacy in Brazil, we have the opportunity to use new approaches. And our vision is to have every single children literated by the age of 5, for example. So here we brought all the information that gives to the donor the urgency, the importance, what we want to do and what we envision for the future. It's a way to summarize the important parts of what we do, why we do, how we do, and what we want for the future. But a really important thing here, it's more for a summarize, and it uses tendencies of psychological trends. So it might not be appealed for everyone. As we talked about in the last session, studying the donor is really important prior to construct the materials. But here, this framework works basically for most of the donors and most for the general and generic materials that we have to have prior to conversation. So here we have an example. And when I say a framework, and you heard me talking about going from different directions and start from different points, it's because this is a clockwise framework. So you can start on risk and then move to crisis, opportunity, and vision. But you also can start from vision and then risk, crisis, and the opportunity. Opportunity, vision, risk, crisis, crisis. You can choose your start point and go the way around, and you can go clockwise or anti-clockwise. The idea here is that you're gonna have all the informations necessary to a good narrative arc for your project or for your organization. Usually, I like this because it gives you a sense / obligation to divide the material. So using this, you're not going to be able to talk about your organization and your main project. You're going to have to do one for each, because the idea is to be able to talk about this in 1/2 pages. So it gives you the obligation to divide things. And it's really good for the organization, because for some donors, you're going to present your organization as a whole. For other donors, you're going to present a project, because some of the donors are interested in giving institutional funding for your organization to use as you wish. Some of them will give you money just for a project or just for a part of the project. So here is a way to construct the narratives based on what we think it's necessary. Up until here, up until now, questions, concerns, comments?
Any questions, comments, anything?
Do we have anything on the chat? No.
No. Okay.
Okay, so I will go ahead, but
Can I ask something?
yes, sure.
Yes, Vander. So I think it's really important to have your story clear and your sort of like maybe even your uniqueness. But my experience so far is that it's not about your story so much, but rather what the funder expects. So you need to kind of talk to them. It's not talking about your own story, but rather using language that the donor expects and that the donor wants. Because I've had many cases where we had an amazing project, but it didn't fit with what the donor wanted. So I think yes, you have to have your story clear, but you also need to see how to align it with what the donor is expecting or wanting. And for us, sometimes that is really challenging because we do a lot of get a lot of EU funding, and yes, sometimes the EU is focusing on things that like, for example, we had an interesting project on decolonization, but they didn't fund it because they don't want any organization from outside of Europe. So it doesn't make sense to talk about decolonization without participants from the global South. So I think this is really challenging when you fundraise, to understand what the donor is looking for.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, because one of the topics on writing the proposal is about to understand the donor language and how you incorporate here on your sessions. So here we have the material, right? So we have a pager. So the next step will be studying the donor and then go back to the material we have and change some language so we can talk the same language and use the same vocabulary. But it's clear that sometimes the work is ours. Not sometimes, every time. We're gonna have to make we have a say in Brazil that you have to give it to the donor. So you have to chew and then give it all the information. Here, you don't need to think. Everything is here. Using your language, using the same words, using the same pattern. So we don't have to think much to understand that what I'm saying is the same thing you say. So I'm going to go ahead for the writing a proposal. Writing a proposal is the same idea of doing the pitch, but now how can I convert to the written part? Doing the pitch usually is the easiest part for the organization, because as we are working every day on the projects, as we are going to our offices, going to meetings, meeting our volunteers, meeting our beneficiaries, it's easy for us to talk about what we do. But when we need to write it down, that's a challenge, because sometimes the donor is going to give you a tweet to write about your mission, a tweet to write about the scenario. And we know the scenario usually, for example, is not that easy to talk about. So why you need to have a food bank program in Gaza in a tweet? Not gonna be easy to say a lot of things on that short number of characters. So here are some tips to help us to translate. And this is the biggest activity that a fundraiser do, because we're always translating what we do to the donor's language, to a written sentence, to a different type of speech, to a video, to a podcast, to a project. I see the chat popping up. Okay. So I like to work with the idea that as we talk, we have a rhythm. Nobody talks like a robot, unless you're Alexa, then you talk like a robot. But everyone talks with a rhythm. Everyone talks with an accent. And if you don't write with rhythm, nobody's gonna listen to you. So nobody's gonna read your proposal. So the proposal needs also to sound like a music. It's a term for us to understand that the good writing will move. So having just long sentences gets bored. Having just small sentence is also boring. So you have to construct the arc of the written narrative, just like you're constructing a song. And it's not difficult. It's just an exercise of us thinking on how we would speak about the topic and then break the sentences in a different way. Sorry, someone passed it here and I lost the the track. So proposal needs to sound like music. For example, in a musical, we have a big story told by music. So let's get Wicked because the premiere is close by. So when we have, for example, Popular by Glinda, we have a story. She's talking about something, and we have idea from the beginning to the end of the song. And then we have Defying Gravity, and we have an idea from the beginning to the end of the song. But when you see the whole musical, we're also going to have other musics, and all of them are going to make sense together because they're all helping us to understand the same story. So when we are writing a proposal with different questions, this is one thing to have in mind. So writing as a song, but also how I'm writing here in question 1 will link to question 2, and how I get the attention of the evaluation board, and how someone who is reading my proposal is getting the attention about what I'm writing. So the full proposal, it's like having a full musical, because questions and different parts will be different sessions. The biggest idea here is not to lose the evaluator, but let's call this person this. It's not lose their sight, because I've been in the position of evaluating proposals, and sometimes, can you hear me? I say I'm freezing. Okay. Sometimes when you're reading a proposal, it gets so bored that you want to disqualify them because they got you bored. And usually when you have a set of evaluators, at least here in Latin America, when you have like 5, if you have like 0 in 2 questions, your proposal doesn't even make to the next evaluator. So we need to get the attention through the whole process to have the attention through all questions. Usually the grant proposal, for example, grant application, it's over 20 questions. That person will read over like 30 applications. Imagine you reading 20 questions over 30 applications. It's a lot of questions. So we need to stand out. So that's why having the written session as a music will help us through the process. Here I have an example of how you can play with words when you change the size of the sentences. It gets more pleasant, it gets rhythm, it's like a harmony, and it's how we speak. So when the evaluator is reading the proposal, he or she or they are gonna feel like you were talking to them. So, and here is the idea. I know it sounds very poetic to say to you, write like a music, write like a musical, but it's actually an exercise of us writing like we talk. Because when we talk, the sentences have different sizes, we use different amounts of words, we have more stops. And so that's the idea. So we talked about rhythm, right? So having these sentences from different sizes. Also, we have other best practices in proposal writing that can help us to make the attention to be caught. Instead of going to answer questions, I'm going to vocabulary to talk, to link with Anya. So vocabulary means studying the donor terms, studying the donor language. is trying to understand how the donor talks about something and how to make our language, our story, our mission, our vision more adaptable, more understandable for the donor, because the donor will receive a ton of applications. So you need to stand out. And sometimes the easiest way, and that people do not use to stand out, is to talk the same language in a clear way. So one thing that I like to do, and we're going to talk about resources, I like to use ChatGPT to do a word cloud of the donor's website. So I go to the donor mission page, copy, paste on ChatGPT, and ask to create a cloud of words that the donor uses. And then I go back to those terms and understand what they're talking about. Because, for example, in education, sometimes my organization uses basic education for elementary school, but that donor calls elementary school of K-12. So you're going to have to adapt your language to talk about the same thing, because sometimes when you use your own language, even though you're talking about the same thing, the donor will not see the synergy. They will not understand, because again, they received a lot of emails, a lot of applications. And if it's not easy for them to identify, they're just going to pass to the next one that made their work. So we studied the donor's website, study the donor materials. One thing that I like a lot before sending grants application, and then it's also a tip for Wilbert, right? Who talked about grants, I guess, on the chat. Was him? Yes. One thing that I like to do is when I know that there will be a grant call, I like to go ahead and try to benchmark with organizations that already received the money, so they can help us with vocabulary, with the process, what they did that was different, so you can help and how to adapt. And that's also linked to Anya. How can I adapt my project to fit in the donor, not just vocabulary, but desires? So understanding what they talk and how they talk might help us to fit our ideas. So, and I have a similar example that Anya gave. The cooperation agency for Spain opened a call for Brazilian projects in Brazil. But for you to submit a proposal, you need to be a private company in Spain with offices in Spain, not necessarily having partners in Brazil. So you as a private company in Spain could submit a proposal for a project in Brazil without even have an office in Brazil. So how we take advantage, we Global South take advantage of those open calls. What we did on that call, we start calling every private company that we knew that was Spanish and saying, hey, we have this call. If we write the proposal, would you help us submitting in our name and then sending the money? So this is the way around we did with that opportunity specifically. But sometimes the grant calls will not make sense. And again, will be our job as a fundraiser to make sense of the nonsense of the donor. And sometimes we need to teach the donor what is possible and what is not, because sometimes they're going to have an idea for a project in Brazil that doesn't make sense, because they're, for example, a project of internet in the Amazon rainforest. I need to have electricity first. So you want to do a project, it's going to cost a lot because we need to bring electricity first, and then I can help you with that. If you give me money for both, cool, I can do it. Sometimes we need to teach about our own reality because the calls are always on that side. Okay, so back to writing a proposal. In addition to have a rhythm, please answer the question. I know it's basic. It's a basic best practice, but sometimes we are so in what our organization do that when we start to answering the question, we lose ourselves in the process. So have a time to wear the shoes of our organization, write the proposal, and also taking that shoe and wearing the shoe of the other side of the table, the person who is reading. It's really important. Like, read the question, read your answer, and ask yourself, am I answering the question? If you think about more than 2 seconds, the answer is no. So go again. The idea here is usually you have to get the attention with at least part of the answer in the first 3 sentences. Because again, the evaluator might have 30 applications of 20 questions. So if you're not able to give him a hint if you're answering the question or not, they might just jump to the other one. So getting the attention in the first sentences with at least part of the answer, it's really, really important. One thing that you can do, and it's using AI, you can ask, for example, ChatGPT to give you a grade on your answer. Just not answering for you, but ask ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever. Like, here's the question. Here's what I would answer. What grade do you give to me? What do you think I should improve? You're not asking AI to write it for you. You're asking AI to help you to improve. So your answer is not tailored and made by AI, but it's just an external vision of what you wrote. Because sometimes we as fundraiser, we work alone. So it's hard for us to do the same job in a short amount of time. So it's really important. And that goes to the review the proposal. It's really important. Once you finish writing all the questions, go back to the first one with time. I like to have creativity breaks. That is a time for me to walk, I don't know, around the block and then go back to my desk and write again or read again. And ask yourself, would I fund the activity that is written? Does this answer the question? If I was the donor, would I give that much money for this project? And that's a question. That's a question you should do yourself because the donor is making that question. So it's important for us to wear that shoe. Do that question, do the answer, explain everything. Do I get with questions? And if I get with questions, it's a good feeling because sometimes we have questions about, oh my God, how it's gonna change the world? So it's a good question, but I'm missing something. That's not a good question. So how do you feel after reading? One thing, please, to your darlings. Sometimes we write a lot. So in the process of review, cut parts of it. We don't need big sentences. Again, we can have short sentences versus big sentences. Just because the word limit is 1,000 words or 1,000 characters doesn't mean you need to use them. Sometimes the clear and short answer is the best version of an answer. And a pro tip here, that I like to do is sometimes the sessions are not going to be enough for me to answer everything that I want to answer on that question. So what I do is go and write clear or bullet topics of what I want to have on that answer. And then I can figure out where I'm going to have spare space. So I can construct like bits of hints of what's missing in other parts. So when the evaluator reads the full thing, it's going to end the day with the full feeling that he or she or they understands the proposal. Ask for help. Ask someone else to read or proofread what you're doing. Ask AI to evaluate, again, not to write, please, copyright. But ask for it to grade your thing. Sometimes the question that the donor makes, it's really open. It's like, what do you do successfully? I exist. I go to work. That's success for me. When the question is too big, too general, what you can do is to ask, for example, ChatGPT or AI or Copilot or whatever you use to help you to create other questions, other small questions to help you to answer the big question. So then you go and answer those small questions in 2 sentences, and then you're going to have a big and more concise answer. Also use some apps to improve your writing. I like Grammarly a lot because, again, English is not my first language. ChatGPT, I like to use it to help me bounce back questions. It's not an app, but I like to use my mom. She is not from the third sector, but I like to explain what I just wrote for her, or whoever. My friends hates me. Just to make a sense of someone else outside my world, it's understanding. And a good tip is also asking someone from other departments of our organization to help us in the proofreading. And also Crystal. Crystal is my favorite AI generator extension for Google. It's an extension for LinkedIn that helps you to understand the language that the donor likes to use. It's a paid tool, but it's a yearly paid tool. Based on what people post, like, and repost on LinkedIn, it's going to give you a psychological profile of that person. So for example, Honey, if I get on Honey's LinkedIn and click on Crystal, it's going to give to me information about what Honey likes in terms of communication. She likes numbers. She's a more emotional person. So it can help you to create the narrative. So Honey's a more emotional person. So I'm not going to approach her with a ton of numbers. I'm going to bring a success story, like a case of a beneficiary and how their life were changed by our project. I like it. It's paid, unfortunately. I know that not every organization has funding for this, but it's a really cool tool for fundraising. And here I have some people to follow on LinkedIn. They're always posting about fundraising and tips. I really like having Al Brown. He wrote from findable to fundable. It's a book about how to navigate the fundraising process. He has an NGO helping NGOs to get funds. And also Daiane Dutra. She is a Brazilian fundraiser that writes in Portuguese and English about fundraising tips in the Global South. And she also has this newsletter with open calls every week. So it's a really nice place to have global open calls for global south as well. Well, I'm sorry I stepped over the time limit, I guess. But here is my LinkedIn if someone wants to connect. And now we're gonna open for some questions.
Thank you so much, Vander. So yeah, open for questions. Any questions or maybe comments from you? Feel free to raise your hand or maybe just, yeah, open your microphone. It was wonderful, actually. I got a lot of insights and learned new things from you, Vander. So I hope also the others learn something new from you today. Yeah. Any questions, comments?
I think Anya has her hand.
Oh, yeah. Yes, please, Anya.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much, Vander. I think that was really, really insightful and very helpful. I very much like the idea how you sort of like construct the proposal, etc. I think for me, one of the main challenges is very much finding the right donor, because I think what we sort of what we experience is that very few donors want to give money to, let's say, real social change or collective action or to advocacy or to, to really address structural change, systemic change. So we kind of need to navigate, trying to promote the work we do and the social change we want to achieve, while also submitting proposals that speak to the donors, which very often are not totally in line with our values or our main goals, or this idea of I don't know, addressing the challenges that capitalism poses or whatever, so I think for me, that is the main challenge. And how can and it's also it's sometimes a little bit hypocritical, because we ask funds of the EU, for example, that is funding wars, etc. And so can you maybe explain a little bit from your experience how you manage that, and how you find donors that are more in line maybe with your own values or the proposed changes that you want to achieve?
Nice question. I'm gonna separate into sessions. So first, how to identify the donors based on value. First thing I would say is to create I don't know if in English will be the same term, but a due diligence for the donor. It's a framework with the core values of your organization that lists things that the donor cannot, in any scenario, be involved. I'm gonna give you an example. I worked with an organization and we had an office in India. So the due diligence was for everyone, every office. And we have the religion relation with cows. So for the due diligence, none of our donors could have as wait, the word in English just disappeared from my mind. Could not have as a source of resources the killing of cows, for example, or anything related to the leather. Or so what we did first thing was to sit as 6 offices in different parts of the world and say, okay, this is a value that Brazil's it's very important for Brazil. This is a value that is very important to India, Nepal, Indonesia. And with that framework, we go to the process of mapping donors. And then we have the names and we say, okay, this person has a problem of investing in war. As we are a peace organization, we cannot have that in our portfolio of donors. So that name out of the list. So that's the first step, understanding what is possible for your organization. And I say possible because, as you said, we have capitalism. We need the money to fund our activities. So we're going to have to wait what is the core value and what we can open our hand to get the funding. So EU, for example, we wouldn't like to have someone funding war. But that's easier to eliminate if it's a company. When we're talking about governments, what necessarily means investing in war? Because every government has a Ministry of Defense, and the money goes to lethal weapons. So even like Brazil is not involved in a war, but we still have a budget for buying weapons. And we have a nuclear session in the Ministry of Defense. So how we deal with that? So the due diligence framework helps a lot to cut names of the list. And then we go to mapping. Mapping, and if you want, you can get my contact and we can sit and talk about that for hours. What I usually do is to sit with the organization, everyone from the finance to the projects, and try to identify the different layers of our work. So list our beneficiaries. So our beneficiaries are young students from Indonesia. Okay, with those three topics, how can we break them more? Oh, as a youth, we have people from this age to this age. We have men and women. We have people with disability. We have the LGBT community. As you're gonna breaking the beneficiaries and the work we do, we're gonna have more layers to find more names. And as we find more names of donors, we're gonna have also different ways to approach the same topic. Because let's say we have a project with youth in Indonesia, and 30% of the project is women. We can write about the same project and ask for UN Women, for example, to fund those 30%. It's not about funding everything, it's about funding just their topic. But you need to break it to visualize more options. Because when we get stuck to the biggest topic that we work, sometimes if it's not education, you're gonna have a really small list of donors. And it's gonna be harder. So going back to the how to translate what we do from different perspectives, it's what's gonna happen. It's what's gonna help us to visualize more possibilities. One other thing that I like is when we talked about that in the last session is our co-petition. It's opportunities of cooperation in our competition organizations. So talk and see organizations that do the same thing that you do, or that looks like do the same thing. Who are funding them? Who is not funding them? Talk to them, maybe cooperate in a project as a way to get into a specific donor base. I'm gonna give you an example from this year. An organization that I was consulting really wanted to be funded by Internet Society. They tried alone, never happened for 2 years. And then we went to an organization that was already funded by them. Did the same project they were applying, we applied together with another organization. They got the funding. And after that, like months after that, they already asked that organization to apply alone next year. So maybe the co-petition is also a possible way to get into the donor bases. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Vander,
again,
very much.
If any of you want to have specific topics about the organizations you work with, I'm always open. You can just send an email and we can find a time to talk about the specifics. I think I still have that framework of breaking beneficiaries into topics to convert in a donors list. I can try to find and I send it to Honey to share with everyone. I'm not sure. I changed computers, so I'm not sure if I still have it.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe one more question, or if there's no more question, then we can close the session. But yeah, it's very interesting to learn from you, Vander. And I agree with you about the last thing that you said. So yeah, any more question? Just one more question. We have 5 minutes left and we need to close. No question? Okay, if suddenly after I close this session, a question pop up in your mind, then you already have the contact of Vander, or maybe I can also share again. Vander will share the presentation, right? And we'll also upload this recording to CCIVS YouTube channel, so you can rewatch again and learn again. And also about the material that Vander mentioned, yeah, we'll share it through email. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining this session. We hope to see you again in another session with different topic. And if you have any topic that maybe we can cover in the next session, please reach out to us to the secretariat at ccivs.org. Thank you very much and have a good evening, good day. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Really great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Bye. Thank you, Vander.
you.
Ciao.
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Honey, as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.